Time keeps on leaving and we keep on moving. When do we pass on our wisdom to the youth? My veteran story, lost arts discussions, fireside chats with a bourbon or two. It's time to hear the stories by our military veterans. Get yourself ready. It's the Lost Arts Podcast. The Lost Arts with Andrew Cox.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Lost Art Podcast. That podcast giving a voice to our veterans. On today's episode, we have Master Gunnery Sergeant Ben Price on with us, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his veteran story and everything that he's got going on. But before we get into that, if you're enjoying the podcast, then be sure to check us out on the website, thelostart.podbean.com. You can go on there. There's a merchandise tab. You always click on that merchandise tab, get you a cool hat, a shirt, a mug, something like that. It's a pretty cool deal. You can also listen to us on YouTube, as well as all the other platforms, and you can just go ahead, join in. And if you feel like it, you can also donate money. There's a place to do that too. If you do, hey, we thank you. Appreciate anything that you can help get our veteran voices out for all to hear. With that, all right, Ben, how you been doing?
Good, Andrew. Thanks, man.
Yeah. I'm excited to have you on here. I lost track of you, man. You disappeared from me for a while. And here come to find out your dadgum master guns freaking out there whipping it on. It's awesome.
Yep. Still in.
Yeah.
Yep.
So let's start then. Let's go back to the beginning for you. Where did you grow up, and then kind of how did you get into military service?
Okay. So that is one of my favorite stories to tell.
Okay.
I actually grew up in on the south side of Chicago, neighborhood called Beverly. And Irish Catholic neighborhood. It's on the south side, so everybody thinks, oh dang, south side. So it was kind of like a little village surrounded by more urban areas, right?
Okay.
And so I lived on the south side till I was about 16. And then I moved to Ohio and spent a few years in Ohio. That's where eventually that's where I met my now wife, future wife. And so my father passed away when I was 21. And so I moved to Ohio with my father. My mother stayed there in Chicago. Well, when he passed away, I was still in Ohio, and kind of like left with all his stuff. We didn't have any other family there. And so, so I had inherited some money from my father when I was 21, and kind of did I traveled the country. I had a band, blues band.
Nice.
I traveled with Fish, and I was a hippie, and I traveled Europe, backpacked over Europe for about 40 days with my sister. Had some good adventures. And but eventually, the money ran out, and I had zero family. I just had my girlfriend, who's now my wife. And so it was just time to get out of Ohio. So I went back to Chicago. And so now I'm probably 23 at this time, 24, when I came back to Chicago. And man, I was working 3 jobs. I was a part-time supervisor at UPS. Box loader first. I was delivering laundry for a tuxedo shop, and I was a server at Smoky Bones restaurant. So working 3 jobs, and with all those 3 jobs I was working, because you can't get a full-time job. It was all part-time. You don't have a college degree, you're part-time something. Unless you can get a union job, which weren't easy to get,
Right.
So, I did not have enough money to go live on my own. But I met a nice barmaid. She let me move into her apartment, so that worked for a while. Until it didn't, right? And I'm like, I'm out of here. But oh crap, I got to move back home with my mom. I'm 24 years old, like, man, I got to figure something out, right? Well, at the tuxedo shop I was working at came a recruiter, and he was like, cool story. Like, he was a mass sergeant on his way back to the fleet. Um, and he worked on HMX-1 as a helicopter mechanic, and he actually got orders back out there.
Oh, wow.
And so he was kind of like done with recruiting at that point, And so when I ran into him, I was actually, fitting him, like tape measuring his, neck and torso and all that for his tux. And then he started his spiel about recruiting, or about the Marine Corps. And I said, okay. I said, so let me get this straight. You guys are offering me uh, a place to stay. I get to move to California. You're going to feed me 3 times a day, and you're going to give me a paycheck for beer money. And he said, yep. I said, bro, where do I sign up? Right? That's all you had to say, man. I got to get out of here. And so, and that might be a lot of guys' story. I did join late, right? Like, so I got to live a little bit before, to see. I think that's something that really made me appreciate the Marine Corps experience.
Yeah.
After living in the city and trying to get along without a college degree, and not only that, like, there was the patriotic piece to it. So I came in 2003. Iraq war kicked off in 2000, 9/11, right? So shortly after that, so really like 2002, going into Baghdad. So by the time 2003 rolled around, I think Fallujah started, like, April, May.
Yeah.
So, yeah, about that time. So really, as I'm going in, it was just as we were going into Fallujah. So, on CNN, man, it was like, every night there was those dudes just dropping tracer rounds, and just watching that stuff. And I think one thing that I think is important here is, like, that people forget is, nowadays we look back, people look back at the war. You get on on the left side, it's like, oh, we never supported the war or anything like this, and then, like, and people say, how bad it was. Oh, there's no weapons of mass destruction. Look, after 9/11, nobody cared about any of it. Nobody cared if there was weapons of mass destruction or not. Everybody was on board with going in Iraq, and everybody supported the troops over there. There was, like, a resounding nationwide patriotic effort. Bush, I think, was president at the time. Was it Bush? Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And man, like, everybody was just kind of united in that effort. Everybody wanted revenge. They didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't matter.
That's right.
And so that was cool. And so it felt good, joining the service. And even my mom, who's a screaming liberal, was all about me going over there. So
Okay.
So anyway, I just bringing that up. And so yeah, so went to San Diego. So I was right on the line of East Coast, West Coast, Chicago. If you're east of the Mississippi, you'll go to on the East Coast, and then west of the Mississippi, West Coast. So Chicago actually is west of the Mississippi, even though it's pretty far west, or pretty far east. So did go to West Coast there, and yeah, pretty much stayed over there. So that's my coming in the Marine Corps story.
That's very, very unique. So you say you had a blues band, toured around with Fish, huh?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's
I
pretty
think I
wild.
saw about man. I probably saw Fish probably 15 times. I did go. I went to the last Grateful Dead concert in
Wow.
in 1996 or 94 at Soldiers Field.
Uh-huh.
And I probably went to like like Jerry Garcia band back in the day when it was what was the guy's name? Merle Saunders and all those guys. Man, I probably seen those way more times than any of the other ones. Probably 30. Probably saw George Clinton and the Funky Bunch, Funkadelic guys. I probably saw those guys 30, 35 times.
Wow.
Went to a lot of concerts.
Yeah.
My thing back then. Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. Wow, that's awesome. Okay, so you joined up. You end up going to San Diego. You're going to be a Hollywood Marine. At least that's what my dad always said, because he went to Paris Island where the real Marines are made. And he always called me Hollywood. So we got the pleasure of going to Hollywood to boot camp, but not San Diego. But tell us a little bit about that adventure. Like, you're older, you're coming in, you go to boot camp. How was that for you?
So different times, right? Like, so, back then in 2003, we were recruiting just about anybody, bringing anybody. I had, I remember the whole recruiter story, right? That everybody had at that time was like, okay, how many times you smoke weed? Well, all right. So like, how many days? How many days did I smoke weed? How many years did I smoke weed for? No. How many times did you smoke weed? Okay. Yeah, I don't know, man. You're like, okay, look, I'll give you a choice. You can either say 0 or 1. And I said, well, why 0 or 1? He said, well, if you say 0 or 1, you always remember it. If you say any number higher than 1, you'll probably go forget it, and then they'll see the inaccuracy. So 0 or 1, I was like, oh man. All right, let's just go with 0. But I had a misdemeanor for like having an ounce of weed in my car. He said, no, it don't matter, man. Just stick to your story. He said, no matter, of course, no matter what happens, the first couple of days of boot camp, just say 0, and it worked.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and I remember going for my top secret clearance, man, and I really wanted to like air it out, man. Just be like, look, man, when I want to tell the story, like, look, the recruiter told me, and I started to tell him the story, like, yo, let me just stop you right there. Are you gonna tell me something from before 10 years ago? And I was like, well, I was going to. Like, I don't care.
Don't need to know.
Yeah, don't need to know. But anyway, so what it was like. So anyway, I say all that to say, times were different. So there was a lot of older folks. I was not, if matter of fact, back then, if you didn't, if it wasn't like, if you were going to boot camp like in June or July or something like that, then it would be a lot of most of the younger kids that are just graduating high school, right? But I went actually in early April. So school hadn't even let out yet, right? So so I kind of had a ragtag bunch in in my squad bay, and it was not. I was not out of place being an older recruit.
Okay.
Matter of fact, there was a lot of guys. There was a 30-year-old guy, bald 30-year-old dude.
Wow.
As a recruit. Yep. So yeah, me being older, it was not, and there was other dudes that was like me. There were a lot of other hippie guys, right?
Yeah.
They were there that had similar experiences. A couple of them got kicked out while I was there. But there was some foreign nationals, a good amount of foreign nationals. I remember Indian guys that barely spoke English, definitely Hispanic guys that barely spoke English. Some of them who ended up radio operators. I'm like, I don't know, this guy doesn't speak English. How's it going to be a radio operator for an officer calling for fire? Anyway, but yeah. So
wow. So and then did you find boot camp difficult? Was it easy?
So I always was kind of, I was always like a physical guy. I always liked PT. And so me coming in at 25, I was pretty stocked already, coming in. I came in at I think I came into boot camp at about, maybe 190 pounds.
Okay.
and was somebody who was going to the gym every day for a long time. You know,
Mm-hmm.
even in high school, I wrestled in high school, um, and uh, and so that is, you know, as wild as my life was, I was always, you know, a pretty fit dude. So the physical part was not hard at all, but
Okay.
the mental piece, you know, of you know, breaking down my individualism, if
Mm-hmm.
you will, that was extremely difficult mentally.
Yeah.
Uh, like my brain, man, was going through some wild stuff. Uh, you know, some of that might have been, you know, detox, but no, I mean,
Oh, it's good.
but it was just, you know, you, in order to do it right, in order to actually obtain instant willing obedience to orders,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to be able to like hear something that someone says and then without even thinking about it, doing it, you know, that is not something that I had done for anybody, maybe ever, you know,
Yeah.
like, you know, I think I was a pretty good younger kid, but definitely in high school, um, you know, I felt like I was always like, kind of like, maybe everybody feels this way, but I felt like I was one of the better dudes, that always had to be around like the bad dudes. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Um, and so, you know, I like being around like the bad guys, but I was like the good guy of the bunch, you know, the one that always, you know, when they would want to do something stupid or like, you know, especially illegal or whatever, I'd be like, oh man, I don't know, dude. You know, I was always that guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but I always wanted to be around those type of people, you
Yeah.
know. Um, and so and so this was weird for, I think a lot of it is, especially growing up in the city, man, like, you know, doing bad and culturally, what for me growing up was like good. You
Yeah.
know, that was good, man. Like if you, the badder you were, you know, it was like the better you were, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And coming into the Marine Corps, it's like there's all this like weird positive peer pressure. Like I never had that before.
Yeah.
Um, so I think what that says about me is like, you know, yeah, like I am prone to peer pressure. Um, but if it's positive, like yeah, that works too. And then I could pretty
Mm-hmm.
be an actual good dude. Um, yeah, but that was definitely, you know, tested. I remember in boot camp, man, like just my brain like telling me wild stuff and me having to shut it up constantly.
Yeah.
You know, like you know, like there's a couple different parts of the brain, like where like one that like kind of just like says stuff like just random. You're like, no, shut up. You know, like I remember doing that a lot at
Yeah.
that time. Or like if you're wandering off in a daydream and you're like, oh, that's stupid. You know, that one like the thing that says it is stupid. You know, like that's like me, I guess, or what I consider is the dominant part of my brain and my
Right.
consciousness. And yeah, so definitely has some probably new opportunities to distinguish those parts of my brain to
Yeah.
say like, hey, yeah, you're not dominant anymore. You know, this guy's dominant.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So it really was a transformation then for you. Like
100%, 100% transformation. Yeah.
very cool.
And I like being IT, man. I'll tell you, I like, man, I gave my drum service hell. I loved it. Man, hey, they're like, we need a good. You want to get on the quarter deck? I'd be like, yo, as long as I wasn't getting my platoon in trouble, I was all about it. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was ready for a workout. Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. So finish boot camp. You go to because you're calm, right?
Calm, yep.
Yeah. So you go to MCT, and then if I was MCT, eye opening for you, or
Um, I mean, a little bit of a blur. I mean, I remember a couple, you know, funny highlights. I remember, man, I'll never forget. There was a gunny. You know, this guy like he introduced. He seemed like he was like the coolest infantry guy that I had witnessed. You know, maybe probably the coolest Marine I had witnessed since I've been coming up in the Marine Corps.
right?
He was just like he was a gunny. You know, he was super cool, kind of chubby. You know, like and he was teaching us like the AT4, like one of those things. And he asked if anybody had questions, and I raised my hand, and I was like, I got a question, Gunny. And so I called this guy Gunny. I'm like this, private in MCT. Anyway, he just kind of laughed, but the other instructors, man, they pulled me out and freaking chewed my butt. I remember that's also the first place where I chewed tobacco was in MCT.
Okay.
But it was neat, like, just like getting the infantry skills and like getting my mind thinking about, man, okay, I'm probably going to go to Iraq, and these are the things that I'm going to need to know in order to survive and win on the battlefild. So that was definitely neat. I'll never forget sleeping under the stars, right? On the top of those California mountains, just looking at the constellations was so cool. Those things I'll never forget. Yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
All right. So you go to from there comm school?
Yep.
Now was that out 29?
That's right, 29 Palms.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so now giving some of my getting some of myself back, but I knew that, like, I really wanted to adopt this new, Marine Corps lifestyle. But I had a hard time in comm school. Obviously I must have done pretty good on the ASVAB, right? I got a higher than average GT score. So I was given comm, but really, like, I was never a good student, kind of my whole life. I think, I have no idea how I did well on the ASVAB. But the comm school was hard for me. Not because of the content was not hard, but sitting in an academic classroom was hard.
Yeah.
I was bored out of my mind. These guys are like, I'm going to comm school, right, to be a data marine, and they're like talking about what a mouse is, and like, and here's a keyboard, and I'm just like, oh gosh, they wake me up, man. But back then, you remember, dude, if you were in a class, no matter what it was, you start falling asleep.
Oh yeah.
We don't do that anymore, right? But the instructor would be like, look, hey, you see somebody falling asleep, you smack the hell out of them in the back. And so that happened to me a lot. I remember getting my ass handed to me over and over daily.
Oh, that's great.
That part was tough. But yeah, like, and it was, it was pretty strict. I felt like they had a pretty tight leash on us still. And, we still marched, and they still do it today. And that's one of the only schools that I see that still, march to chow, and, and keep some of that structure from boot camp, some of that, like, real good order and discipline stuff. Man, I've been SOI, and dude, those kids these days. I said I wasn't gonna say anything bad on this interview. Anyway, but it's not the same. All I'm saying is they still do a really good job at comm school to keep those guys disciplined. And I did appreciate that.
Very nice.
Yeah.
And how long was that school?
I think back then it was probably 3 months.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I think it was 3 months. And I remember I probably was middle of my class by the end of it. And I remember so back then, I don't know if they still do this, but depending on your class standing, right? If you were the top of the class, you got to pick first where you wanted to go. So what they would do is they would get it from the monitor and find out, hey, these are all the places where I need to send your Marines. So if there's 20 guys in the class, they give 20 duty stations. They say plug them where you think they would fit in best, right?
Yeah.
And so by the time it got down to the instructor, he would just place all these MCCs along with a description on the whiteboard. And if you were
Mhm.
at the top of the class, you would pick on their, what where you want it, and then it would kind of go down the row. So like you got last, hey, just take what's left, right? um, and I was kind of like, I was probably towards the end, I guess. I don't know, but so who first, right? Like people are gonna be like, hey, I want to go I by my house,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
For one, like keeps them out of going overseas. I don't know why they want that. Some people who like really did want to get some, and they're like, yeah, I'll go to freaking, I want 2-4, or
yeah.
5. Um, and so by the time it got to us, there was not a whole lot of options, but there was I always sat next to my buddy John Morris, um, and he just recently retired, but but him and I sat next to each other. He probably did a few, was probably one of the main slappers. But he was a good friend of mine, and I looked at him like, "Hey man, you want to go to Okinawa? Go to Japan?" He was like, "Yeah, dude, let's go to Japan." So we were hoping, that nobody was going to pick Japan.
Yeah.
And there was 3 slots for Okinawa, and one of them was taken right before it got to us. And then as soon as it got to us, man, we both agreed, yep, we'll take Okinawa. So we went to Okinawa.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So, and well, you'd done some traveling, so you'd been over in Europe and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
how did you think once you got to Japan? What was the differences, right, like that you saw from Europe to Japan, and then also the United States?
Um. Hmm. Yeah, I never thought of that. I mean, I don't know if I could describe right now like differences. Um, because really, I wanted the adventure. And I really felt like going. Well, it was just a different experience altogether. Like,
Yeah,
not a lot of times, like, it's not the place, but it's like it's the place plus like what's going on with the person at the time, plus like who you're with, plus the time. It's not just the place,
yeah, very true.
so in it was interesting going there. um you know I remember landing in what is it, Osaka, whatever.
Hmm.
And and then somehow I can't remember, ended up getting into Okinawa, and probably flying into whatever, Kadena, or what's that, I forget the name of the city. Naha, was it Naha, right? Yeah.
Naha, yeah, yeah,
Um, and then getting on Foster, and they used to have like an in-dock thing,
yeah. Hmm.
So that's not very cultural. I mean, it's a cultural trip, I guess. Not even going there because it's mostly probably just civilians or what, just
Yeah,
like flying anywhere, and then kind of get picked up by some Marines, and then going to Foster where it's all American folk, and then going in this confined area with this group where we're getting like all these like onboarding briefs. This thing, I remember it lasting like 2 weeks. I feel like it
yeah.
was like 2 weeks of briefs and all this, because I think there's some I think they have to get that what is it, the agreement, the SOFA
Sofa.
card, right?
Hmm.
So you had to get the SOFA status thing, I think, before you could like actually go out and
Right.
and do stuff. So it felt like I was in America still, I think. Yeah, so kind of an American experience there. I remember, yeah, the in-dock thing was interesting. I remember like there was like a gunny, and this guy was like got together with this one of the lance corporals, and they're like making out in the club, like this lance corporal and this gunny, and I was like, man, that's freaking weird, you know.
Wow.
And because it wasn't just new guys, I probably wasn't even a lance corporal yet. I was probably still a PFC. Um, but there was a good amount of females there, and what I realized now is, man, like we were taking in females at the time, right? But they were all probably they didn't want the females probably in combat at the time, right? And so
Yeah.
they're probably sending them all to Okinawa.
Okay.
Because I remember when I was in Okinawa, it was probably 40% female when I was there in 2003. It was
No
the beginning
kidding.
of the war. I think they just weren't ready to have women in combat, right? I don't maybe they couldn't be. I don't really remember the details, but they did need people, and so they were sending a lot of females to Okinawa.
Wow.
And I remember like it was it was probably about half 50-50 females and males in our little group, and they all found somebody. So I remember there's like all these and I remember my drill instructor specifically telling us, hey, look, if you want a successful career in the Marine Corps, stay away from female Marines.
Really?
Yeah, I got that brief, when I was just coming in, right?
Yeah.
I also was told, hey, don't trust officers. That was another one. Do
Yeah.
not trust your officers.
Wow.
Matter of fact, my drill instructor specifically told me I hate officers. I can't stand officers.
No kidding.
So that was interesting, So like these are like
Yeah.
the things that I learned coming in. One, stay away from female Marines. Two, don't trust officers. And I really did stay away from female Marines my whole career. As far as being intimate with them.
Right.
And I think that was probably a good thing, because in Okinawa there was a ton of drama around relationships, just like love triangles. We have like there was porn videos and getting exposed, all kind of stuff, a lot, bad stuff, So
Wow.
and I got an Okinawan girlfriend at the time. This is before I was married. I got an Okinawan girlfriend. She was a little older, and was a great, good, wonderful girlfriend. I don't know how to say it. We'll keep it clean here, but probably like probably how can I say this? Probably the best intimate experience I would ever have in my life, in with my Okinawan girlfriend. And I kind of kept that the whole time I was there. Definitely not somebody I would like take home to mom, but fun for Okinawa. And we traveled a lot, man. I traveled a lot. I think while I was in Okinawa, I had a couple things I learned in the Marine Corps there as a young Marine was one, like someone told me, like, hey, any opportunity you get to volunteer yourself, just do it. There's other Marines that they just want to stay doing what they're always doing. If they ask, they say, hey, we need a Marine to do this thing, like before they even tell you what it is, just raise your hand, know. And I was that guy. There was I started out at 7th Com, going to 7th Com, and they needed somebody to go on the what they called the radio data team, and none of the other data Marines wanted to do that because they felt like, oh, you're going to get away from your MOS, you're not going to learn your MOS, which to them was just like working on the stack of servers, with a router and a switch in it, and like, you're not going to be able to learn the fine details of all those pieces of equipment if you go to the radio data team, which was totally false, because I get to the radio data team and I've got, I don't have a server, but I've got a computer, a switch, and a router, and so I was working hand in hand, like who's better. So the radio data team supports the 3-star 3MEF general.
Yeah.
So, what better support are you going to get than providing comms for the 3MEF general? And it was great. Everywhere the 3MEF general got to go, we got to go. So
wow. And how many was on the team?
It was, so they had 2 teams of 4, but they only ever sent out the A team. or one of the teams.
Yeah.
And luckily that was the team I was on.
Nice.
So yeah, it was great, man. Every time the general was always going to the Philippines, took frequent trips to the Philippines, frequent trips to Thailand, South Korea. And then for Corporate Gold and Balcatan, they would have all these planning conferences that the general would attend. And so we were a part of each and every one of those. And it's not like, they weren't going to Pattaya, or they weren't going to Pampanga in the Philippines. They were going to Manila and Bangkok,
Yeah.
like some of the cooler places. And so that was great. I think I had at that time, I think I had a girlfriend in Okinawa, girlfriend in the Philippines, and a girlfriend in Thailand, and I call them up every time, we had a burner phone, we put a different SIM card in.
That's fun.
Yeah, so like living my dream, right? I'm 26-year-old Lance Corporal, dude, living this life. It was wonderful. Which, by the way, like there was also, some sadness involved with that because, I think I did, and we all did, kind of dealt with some survivor's remorse, right? Because here we're having this great time, spending war funds out in Asia Pacific when 2004, now Phantom Fury, 2-4 and 2-5 are out there, getting some in Fallujah for round two. And a couple of the guys that I went to boot camp with had died pretty Ricky Tick as soon as they got out there, which was pretty sad. But around about that same time, they had the tsunami in Thailand.
Yeah.
So that tsunami in Thailand, I want to say somewhere between 1 and 2 million people died from that tsunami, like just huge. Like that.
Yeah.
It wiped away parts of that whole in Thailand, those islands at the southern tip. I can't remember what it's called. Phuket, right? Phuket.
Oh yeah.
Sri Lanka got hit really hard, and what was the other spot? Parts of Bangladesh, or not Bangladesh. I can't recall. Anyhow, so yeah, it was about three countries that got hit in that, and so this was a great story. So during that time, this is terrible, right? An international event, but the war is still going on in Iraq. But this was a time when we were really also now like we've been at war for about 2 years, and I think probably kind of like the international view of the United States might have been dipping a little bit. And this was a great opportunity to kind of win some hearts and minds internationally by getting involved with this tsunami disaster relief.
Right.
So and so I remember when this thing kicked off, we went to the planning conference for it, and during the planning conference, the Princess of Thailand came out and said, "Hey, we need a lot of support. We don't have enough body bags to clean all these, these deteriorating bodies up off the beach. And we need help fast." So they put a joint task force together. The Princess of Thailand she owned like a string of resorts, and she ended up canceling all the bookings for about 6 months at her one of her string of resorts, and gave the entire resort colony to the 3MEF.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah. Straight up. So there was no living out in that area by Pattaya, whatever. I can't Sada Heap or whatever. No Sada Heap or none of that. No, we were in fancy fancy hotel places, but not really fancy. But you know, for being a Lance Corporal in the Marine Corps, it was pretty nice, you know.
Yeah.
And, it was it was close to Patia. And so we operated out of there, but it was a joint thing. So there was other countries involved, and not just countries, but Air Force was in there. There was an Air Force 1-star, along with the Marine 2-star General Gluck, and the 3-star at the time. I think it was General Blackman.
Okay.
And so you know, the whole com battalion came in there, and then we had Marines. We were kind of command and controlling from there the Mews that were going to all these.
Did I lose you?
The bodies and all that stuff. What's that?
Oh, it paused for a second. I didn't know what happened there. No, you're good. Go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, so we lived in Thailand there doing that thing for about 4 or 5 months. I think it was Joint Task Force 536, if I recall.
Wow. And what was that like? Because you're doing cleanup and everything there, right?
I was providing comms for the generals.
Got it. So you weren't down that, yeah.
No, I was like 12 on, 12 off. I had like a tied live-in girlfriend, you know, and you know, it was good living. It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sad, you know, and all the disaster, but it was a good time.
Okay.
And then we had one right after that. In the Philippines, they were doing a lot of illegal waterlogging. Not waterlogging. I'm sorry. Illegal logging, cutting trees down on top of mountains.
Oh, okay.
And when they would do this on the top of these mountains, it would kind of loosen up the soil and create these mudslides when it rained. So a hurricane would come in, and it would create these mudslides on top of the mountains. The mudslides would you know, take out these cities that were at the bottom of the mountains. And the particular area we're in was Pampanga, not too far from Clark Air Force Base in the Philippines. And I remember when that occurred, they put us on this team of folks to go work with the 3-letter agencies, you know, like you probably USAID, and these are all civilian folks, to represent the com battalion for you know, for providing communication support, right?
Right.
I'm a Lance Corporal, you know, in a com battalion, and I might have been a corporal at the time, and we had a sergeant, you know, and the sergeant was less mature than I was. And I can't remember if it was 2 of us or if it was the whole radio data team. But, you know, they're asking us all these questions. Okay, what kind of power you guys need? What kind of, you know, all these logistical sausage they were making, and we were ill prepared, man. We had no idea what to tell these guys, and our job was kind of liaise to the com battalion and tell them, hey, this is what, you know, the infrastructure looks like. This is the power you guys are going to see. This is where you're going to be set up. We didn't get any of those questions answered. But anyhow, we ended up going through with the mission, and we stayed at Clark Air Force Base for a couple weeks. But another humanitarian operation. So we did a lot of cool things out there, even though we weren't, you know, in Iraq at the time.
Yeah.
There was still a war effort, right, to win the hearts and minds of the on the international stage, which was important.
Yeah.
You know?
Very much so. Yeah. Wow. And how long were you in Oki?
I was there 2 years.
Okay.
Yep, I was there 2 years. Man, it felt like 5 years. Felt like a long time. Yeah. But man, what an adventure! You know, what a first enlistment. You know, and I think probably one of the reasons I re-enlisted, because man, the Marine Corps was just good to me up to that point.
Right. Yeah.
I had a wild adventure, and I remember talking to civilian folks after I reenlisted, and they're like, "Man, yeah, I knew this guy." And he said it was the worst experience in the world for him, and I would hear that again and again, and really, it's just kind of luck of the draw, man. Like if I had gone to an infantry battalion right out of comm school, I would have had a much different experience.
Oh yeah.
Um, and who knows if I would have stayed in or not, and and I think it is probably some of that survivor's remorse that I have. That's like, man, I still need to give back. I haven't given back the same way the brothers and sisters who I came in with gave.
Right. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? So, yep. But I got my chance eventually.
Yeah. probably a couple times, huh?
Yeah.
All right. So you spent 2 years in Oki, and then where to?
And then I went to 9th Com Battalion.
Okay.
And I was there when I got to 9th Com. They were both their companies. They kind of did like a Alpha Bravo thing, where their Alpha company would go for 6 months. They would come back. Bravo company would go in.
Yeah.
And then they had like a support company. Well, when I got out there, they were doing a RIPTOA. So both companies were out, and it was just a support battalion. And man, one of the things I was really looking forward to coming back, CONUS, was to get to go and directly support the war effort.
Mm-hmm.
There was just something I didn't feel right. It didn't sit right with me that I just spent 2 years while my brothers and sisters are fighting over there.
Yeah.
Here I am, living my life, my best life in the tropics. And so when all that was left, right, is the remain behind element. So any remain behind element who's not there to fight is like the guys that are broke, the ones that are too fat to deploy, or have marital issues, or some kind of issue, right? And so that's the kind of folks that I was back there with. A few good ones, but and and so they asked for volunteers one day. I think I worked there probably a month, and they asked for volunteers. Hey, we got some openings over at the 13th MEU. Who wants to go? And I was like, man, get me out of here. I'm ready to go. And it was probably, it wasn't just like 2 days later, and I was checking into the MEU, to their little data section for the command element. And man, I met some great characters there. These guys, it was cool because these guys had been in and out of Iraq. They had experienced it all. They were like, getting ready to go back, right? And had all this experience from the past couple of years. I experienced working with the best operations officer that I've seen yet, Lieutenant Colonel Justice Chambers, and the MEU was headed up by Colonel Mundy at the time, who is now General Carl Mundy III.
Mm-hmm.
I think 3-star. I'm not sure if he's still in or not. But last time I saw, he was a 3-star general. But yeah, so man, just and just about everybody that was in that group, man, was just legendary. At least in my eyes. Just legendary folks all around. The Sergeant Major Hines, who actually promoted me to Master Gunnery Sergeant.
Okay, very
just
cool.
Months ago, which was pretty neat. And Master Gunnery Sergeant Luna, who he was the fires chief, who was infamous in the 10th and 11th Marines realms. So yeah, just awesome people all around, man. Even the Lance Corporal. To me, those are the best people I've ever worked with in the Marine Corps was being on that
Yeah.
mute. And hey, we did get an opportunity to deploy, and then got extended multiple times out there in Tacatum. You know, being a com Marine, look, I, I don't have any great war stories for you, to be honest. Um, the com guys, unless you're a radio operator, which I was, and I was a data Marine.
Right.
You know, our world is really in the air conditioning somewhere. uh, I did take a few helicopter trips out to Baghdad to like exchange some equipment and things like that.
Right.
And I did take a go on a convoy to Fallujah. I think again, what did I go there for? I think it was we had the I don't know if you remember command post of the future, and
I don't remember that.
we got this brand new command post of the future. It's this giant server. It looks like a desktop computer, but it's not. It's a badass you know, like a super gaming computer, right? It was like one of these
Okay.
guys, but probably even something that would exceed that. It was huge, and had a lot of capability to it, and it would take all the stuff, you know, yeah, C2PC, right? And then you had I'm not gonna go too much con stuff, my bad. But you know, Blue
It's all
Force
good.
Tracker, right? All the
Uh-huh.
tracking stuff,
Yeah.
the fire stuff, the FATIDs and all of that, and then the air guys, they had their own Falcon View and all these systems. Anyway, so any tracks that were out there, this thing took them all and then put them in one kind of pane of glass. It integrated everything into one thing that would sit in front of the watch officers. It's called Command Post of the Future. I think the Army still uses it. But I had to go on a convoy to Fallujah to switch it out. So
Yeah.
that was exciting, you know, but not, you know, no action. So yeah. But it was a great experience, man. Best people I worked with. Still got to see, you know, like the remote action, right? Like some of the UAS stuff. And some of the UAS stuff was able to capture the fires missions that we were putting down range, either air or artillery. By the time I got there in 2006, there wasn't a whole lot of artillery left, other than, you know, loom. We had a lot of loom missions, but you know, if you look at the FATIDS map of the places that you can't hit because of, you know, religious significance or historical significance or, you know, whatever infrastructure, it's pretty much covered the whole map. There was like your bad guy had to be like in a really unlikely or, you know, unlucky spot in order to get hit by artillery. But those pilots were dead on, man. So you know, they weren't getting away with much at that time. So if somebody was doing something they weren't supposed to along the side of the highway, and one of our eyes in the sky caught them, yeah, it was going to be a bad day for that guy, and we'd be able to watch, you know. So
it's game over at that point.
Yeah. And so definitely a different war by the time I got there in 2006 than what some guys experienced in, you know, 03, 04.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That happens, you know. It changed, man. Think about what's happening over in that region right now. Think how much change has happened already, you know. It's been wild. Yep.
Yeah, I do remember just seeing Fallujah. I don't know your experience, or if you got a chance to be there after, you know, the invasion there, but that place was just rubble, man. To see a city, you know, you see these like post-apocalyptic movies, man. That place was just a disaster, man.
Wow. So I was there right before they went into Fallujah for the big battle, and while I was there, we flew over Fallujah in a helicopter. It was at night, and as we're flying over, the gunner's like, "Hey, you want to look?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So I get up and I'm looking out, and I see these little flashes of light.
Yeah.
I'm like, "What the heck is that?" So I point at it, and I'm like, "What's that?" He's like, "Oh, they're shooting at us." And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna sit back down. I was like, no, I don't want no part of that, man.
Yeah.
He's like, they can't hit us. They can't hit us. I was like, I don't know, man. I don't
Yeah.
want to take that chance. So
Yeah.
that was my experience with Fallujah.
Yeah. Yeah, those helicopter rides were great, man. And, you know, they're always at night, only fly at night, and then they had to be real low to the ground, right? Just all of them. And so I got to go to Camp Liberty and Baghdad, and man, that was just the most beautiful. Just man, it just aesthetically, man, it just makes you feel. It made me feel like a Roman soldier from 300 BC.
Yeah.
You know, being in Baghdad, it was just man, you just
There's
felt
so much history there, you know.
there's nothing new there. You know, it's all dirt, but it's beautiful. Like, you look, you're really in the Hanging Gardens in Babylon.
Yeah.
And they had these trucks go by all the time that would like water the dirt, to prevent dust storms and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And these beautiful palm trees with these canals of water in the most unlikely places where, we're in the middle of a desert and there's these like beautiful canals of water. And then I remember I had to go to the I Corps headquarters. I can't remember what for, but they were set up. I just remember this massive, I don't know what I was looking at, but they just had this massive wall. I'd never seen a bigger wall in my life.
Yeah.
I mean, this thing had to have been, and maybe just because just what I recall in my mind, but I remember this like 200-foot wall, man, like maybe 300 foot, like just gargantuan wall, and there was one slice in the wall that's just big enough for a person to walk through.
Okay.
But walking through there at night with the lights, you see these shadows of the one little opening in the wall. And that shadow, man, just went for like a mile, right?
Oh, wow.
Because everything looks big from the shadow. So when the moon, the shadow from the moon poking through that wall hole, it was just like the most amazing. And I never heard anything about that place I was looking at. But I've never seen anything like it in my life. And it's a wonder why, like, nobody's ever talked about what I saw,
Yeah.
And maybe it's really much smaller, but in my mind, it was really big.
It could have been. Yeah, that's
the experience. It could have been, man. But I'll never forget it. And I remember it was the I Corps headquarters. So
was that Baghdad?
I think that's Army, right? It's the Army.
Yeah.
In Baghdad. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it must have been outside of Camp Liberty. But yeah, I was only in Camp Liberty probably about maybe 5 or 6 days.
Okay.
And then got to fly right back. So yeah. So not a ton of stories, man. Just we were busy, pretty constant. 13 hours on, man, and 11 off for just short of a year. So well, I guess we were there for 6 months, and then we got extended a couple times, and then plus minus the 40 days there and 40 days back on the ship. So yeah, cool stuff.
Well, hey, I think this is a good part. We're right about that hour mark, so we'll wrap this one up and we'll come back and do another one. So don't go anywhere. But hey, thanks for coming on and doing it, man. It's awesome. I love hearing the story. But for all the listeners out there, if you're struggling, you need help, anything like that, you can always dial 988, press option 1, or you can text 939-288, or you can go to veteranscrisisline.net and click on that chat icon. Any of those options are going to get you in contact with somebody that can help you out. Remember that I care about you. Everybody else cares about you, and we want what's best. So please reach out for help. One veteran life lost is one too many. All right. Thank you again for coming on. And to all the listeners out there, stay motivated, change your socks.